For more stories like these, go to www.social-tv.co.za, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on our social mediums.
You're listening to our social newscast with me, Sam Marshall, brought to you by www.social-tv.co.za. Today we're talking to Jean Fitch from Inner City Can Collective about their iconic and historical Mandela Day run past key inner city Mandela landmarks in aid of gender-based violence activism. We unpack the event, but we'll also talk about the scourge of gender-based violence in the inner city. So Jean, very quickly, talk to us about the City of Courage tour.
So basically, we work for an organization called the Inner City Can, and the word CAN means Community Activation Network. And what we are is a collaboration of a whole bunch of NGOs and NPOs that work in the inner city. So we've devised the City of Courage tour as our Mandela Day initiative, because in the inner city, there's a massive need for education and understanding around gender-based violence. And so we decided to use Mandela Day as our reason for creating the tour, because we're running around Johannesburg. We have a number of young men and women who are all part of the inner city and who run through Johannesburg every Saturday morning. And on Mandela Day, they're going to be doing the same thing that they always do, but specifically with a view to understanding what Mandela was about and what gender-based violence is all about today. So that was the idea behind it. And people can watch the tour on Facebook in the comfort of their homes, and they can see landmarks of Johannesburg and in the inner city and see areas that were important to Mandela, and also understand why they are important in the arena of gender-based violence.
Jean, and maybe it's a strange question to ask, but there are very few South Africans at the moment that understand why gender-based violence is on the increase. Have you guys been able to understand the root causes of gender-based violence?
I mean, that's a massive, massive question. It's very difficult to answer it in a few minutes, but the reality is that I think gender-based violence is getting a lot of prominence at the moment because of this sudden increase, which a lot of people are kind of maybe saying that it might be alcohol related, etc. But the reality is that gender-based violence has been happening and has been going on for so long, and it hasn't been getting the platform that it needs for people to understand it and understand the reasons behind it. So, I think maybe it's more in the spotlight now because events are happening and maybe less of other things are happening because of the lockdown. So it's getting more prominent, but it's not something that just suddenly happened during lockdown. It's something that we've been trying to deal with for years and years and years.
Many people then also argue, Jean, that because we have this difficulty in understanding, or there are different aspects to it, that it's very difficult to contain. It's very difficult to be able to get ahead of the problem. Are we just not smart enough to deal with GBV, or what is it?
No, I definitely believe that as the South African community, as the Johannesburg community, we definitely have the smarts and the capabilities, to deal with gender-based violence. It's just something that people need to be aware of, and so much of it is about understanding what it's all about and what actually constitutes gender-based violence. And the only way we can do that is through education, through rehabilitation, and through prevention of further, as you say, further atrocities, basically, that are happening on a daily basis right under our noses. And it's something that every person can and should be involved in some way or other in their lives. It's something that everybody needs to stand up for, stand against it, and stand in solidarity with a cause that is literally killing our nation and killing beautiful, prominent people in our country that we can't afford to lose.
The president's got a 5-point plan. And
yes.
If you read the 5-point plan, I would argue they're no-brainers. I mean, one of them is strengthening the criminal justice system, enhancing the
yes.
legal and policy framework, ensuring adequate care, support, and healing for victims of violence. Those
Yes.
are no-brainers. Are they not
hmm
happening?
I think to a certain degree they are happening. I think there is an inherent mistrust of a lot of the systems that exist, and they, on a daily basis you hear stories about things going wrong. And I mean, that is obviously the way that life works. You hear about more about things that go wrong than things that go right. And I think a lot of the focus of what we're going to be doing about, on the tour of Courage or in the city of Courage is teaching people about what is happening, what they can do, how they can help, and so on. We're going to have prominent speakers who've been in the gender-based violence field for most of them over 30 years. They've been doing things about gender-based violence. We're going to have people contributing and telling us, all sorts of things that are happening and that they can be a part of. And we've got this group of young inner city dwellers, people who come, who come from poor and disadvantaged backgrounds, who are basically taking the city back and saying, this city is ours and this is how we can make a change and how we can make a difference. And, on a very simple basis, it starts with me and it starts with you, and I think that's part of the message that we're going to try and bring across on Saturday.
I'm happy to admit that I think the message that it starts with you and it starts in your home is starting to hit home with a lot of men who are the perpetrators of this crime. If you watch social media, you'll see that there's a lot of encouragement towards organizations, the kind of things that you're doing. But how do we get past, and it's a very important point to start talking. Somebody once told me that in order to do something, you have to talk about it. But how do we
Yes.
get past the point of talking where it doesn't only hit home, but we can actually see it weave its way into the very fabric of society so that we can see the numbers come down and that we don't hear of a pregnant woman who was stabbed to death and hung from a tree?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the collective consciousness, and again, I say, there's so much education that needs to happen, and there's so much realization of how vulnerable people are and how susceptible they are to becoming potential either victims or perpetrators of gender-based violence. And it's almost about saying, these are the factors that you have in your life that could potentially make you into somebody that could be a perpetrator, and you are the person that needs to change this, because a lot of people are born in terrible situations. Some people themselves are the result of gender-based violence. And when they are born into those families as that person, they you can almost see their future written down in front of them. And they have to have the strength and the knowledge and the capability to prevent themselves from going down that road. And, I don't know how you try and, education is the key to understanding this scourge and to understanding why it's happening, and to go right down back to the very, very bare minimum. And as I say, a person who is born as a result of gender-based violence already has the cards stacked against them. And they need to understand that about themselves and do everything in their power to prevent that from happening. So you can go straight down to that embryonic phase of it, or you can go to phases where children are abused by themselves, abused by their parents, by their relatives, and so on, and go on to become perpetrators, or go on to become continuous victims of gender-based violence. So, the difference between being a victim and a perpetrator is often not, there's a very almost fine line between that in some ways. It sounds strange to say, but sometimes, it depends which way the scale tips as to which way your life might fall. And we have to get people to understand that and sort of face it and not turn away from it.
Jean, based on your current response, do you then think that the president's 5-point plan is adequate enough? Because it doesn't speak to some of the issues you just talked about. It doesn't speak to the kind of programs we need to maybe start at school for young men, or the kind of education programs or the kind of processes we need to put in place. It only really talks about legal reform, justice reform, economic power of women. But I would argue that women are not the problem, men are.
I don't want to say that women or men are the problem or the solution. I think we're all literally in this, together. And as I say, it's in each one of us. A young man might have been abused by his mother and goes on to become a perpetrator. So we can't rest the blame solely on men. And whilst we obviously understand and appreciate the fact that men are standing up and saying we can't take this anymore and we are men and we have to do our thing about it, women can't sit back and just watch it happen. Women have to be actively involved in the process as well. The President's 5-point plan is exactly that. It's a plan, and people have to, and it is it's the umbrella under which we need to operate. But bringing an understanding of that plan and what you can do about each aspect of those 5 points is what's more vital, because it's easy to have a 5-point plan, but every person needs to take responsibility for unpacking that plan, taking responsibility for something in that plan, because the president is one man and he can say, this is what I'd like to do, but we all have to buy into that, and we all have to agree that in some way we can make a contribution to making the plan a reality.
Just coming back to the virtual tour that's happening on Mandela Day, from a participatory perspective, people can get involved, they can watch it, but you've also encouraged them to take their own walks and their own runs.
Yes, we have. That's part of the solidarity of this movement. Yes, they can watch us take the virtual tour, but the one thing that has been a constant during lockdown is that we have been in various shapes and forms allowed to get out of our houses and walk around our little area of town. Some places it's actually become quite a heartwarming event, because you can't even drive your car down the street because people are so busy walking and keeping their social distance and doing their exercise in the times that they're allowed to do it. And just the thought of the visual sort of impact of seeing people walking through the streets wearing their orange colors and saying, I'm standing up against gender-based violence. And often people who, if you're walking or running, that's often a lot of people's thinking time. So what we're asking is, if you're going to take to the streets on Saturday in your own suburb, put your orange T-shirt on and spend your walking or running time thinking about gender-based violence and thinking about, if it hasn't impacted your life, thinking about the people that you know of that it has impacted, and trying to figure out in your own head what it is that you can do to make it better.
Now, obviously, they can buy tickets, and I think this is a very important thing to highlight, that during this lockdown, organizations like yourself, I don't know how fortunate you've been, but many organizations that are really in the front line doing fantastic work have been struggling financially. They've had to dig incredibly deeper into their pockets than they could have ever imagined. So the fundraising aspect is very important.
Yes, no, it's a massive consideration for us, because we as a CAN, as I said, as a community action network, we're focused on a lot of different issues. We basically since March been spending time trying to help with food insecurity, trying to help with PPE and all these things. And as you say, the money only stretches so far, and we're just one organization that's trying to make a difference. So, we've committed ourselves to all the funds that we raise for on the day of the City of Courage tour, that money will go specifically towards helping NGOs and NPOs in the inner city that are dealing with gender-based violence, because it's not something that you can fix without some funds. Every time we have to take a young woman and her family away from a violent situation, it's costing somebody somewhere something, and we need to have a kitty of money that we can use so that we can help people when they desperately need it, because sometimes, everybody pulling together and helping is wonderful, but the money has to come from somewhere.
So very quickly, Jean, where can people go? How can they, we don't just want them to buy the ticket, we want them to also call up the organization, see if they can spend an extra rand, maybe donate on a monthly basis. Where can they go?
So we've got a Facebook page, which will be where our live stream will be coming. It's called City of Courage. And if you go onto that Facebook page, we've got an event. You can click on the event and say that you're coming to the event, and there's a Quicket link. We're selling our tickets through Quicket. When you go onto Quicket, you'll see that there's various options. You can participate. You can do the virtual tour. You can sponsor one of the runners that is running on Saturday, or you can make a donation, and that, you can literally donate, like you can donate 5 rand or you can donate 5,000 rand. Obviously, we'd love you to donate 5,000 rand, but that might not happen. So those are your options. And then once we've completed the actual City of Courage tour, then we will definitely keep in contact with all the people that have made connections with us, and hopefully they'll become our new best friends, and want to help us with all our causes that we're working with. So that's our view.
And we all need a bestie.
Yeah. So we're very optimistic about it, and we are so excited about the tour, and we're hoping that it'll hit all the right notes.
Jean, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Sam.
So that's Jean Fitch talking to us about the City of Courage virtual tour that will see runners run past key inner city Mandela landmarks in aid of gender-based violence activism in the inner city. And of course, you can go to Quick Ticket. As she said, a ticket will cost you 100 Rand. So it's something you can do to get involved on Mandela Day.